I divorced my wife 5 years ago. I do my best to be the best dad for my son. He's a teen, and I share custody of him with his mom and her husband, James. I do have personal issues with James because of his unreasonable expectations for my son. He explicitly made it clear that as long as my son lives under his roof, he needs to follow the rules, which is fine. But the problem is James claims my son is being rebellious and disrespecting rules and evading punishments. His latest rant was that my son was hiding stuff in his room and being shady. Who on earth talks like that about their stepkid? As a step-parent myself, I treat my stepkids as my own and not as if they were some neighborhood kids. I found out days ago that James removed the lock my son bought after his stepbrothers kept taking his stuff. They broke his drone camera and eliminating any privacy. When I went to speak to James, he said my son was hiding stuff, though my son said he wants privacy and for his stepbrothers to stop taking his stuff. James argued that transparency is essential in his house and closed doors mean problems. Besides that, I'm teaching my son antisocial behavior instead of encouraging him to bond with his stepbrothers through sharing. He also said my son's a bad influence on his stepbrother since now they want locks too. In the heat of the moment, I got mad and called him paranoid for removing the lock. He asked me to leave, but I told him he had a set time to reinstall the lock, or I would get my son another lock and put it there myself. He laughed, saying he'd love to see me try and do that in his own darn house. He threatened to call the cops for trespassing, but I reminded him that's my son's house as well. He asked if I thought my minor son legally owned the house, and then told me to leave again. The issue hasn't been resolved, and my ex-wife told me off for threatening her husband and trying to dictate what goes on in his house. I fought with her and called her a terrible mother for letting him treat her flesh and blood this way. She said I don't get to talk to her like that because she never agreed on removing the lock, but can't do anything about it. Basically saying she won't make her husband angry, which is typical. Still, this issue involves me too, and I refuse to see my son treated like that by his stepfamily. Not the idiot. Your son is old enough to tell a court that he'd like to come live with you permanently. Stepdad will no longer be a problem. Your son is a teen and deserves privacy, especially if people are taking his things. In my opinion, if this is a huge deal to your son and he's very upset, you could make it your hill to die on. Can your son keep more of his stuff at your place? Your ex-wife prefers to watch her kid in distress than raising a single word against her husband. It would help if you let your son move in with you. Honestly, given the destruction of property, lack of privacy, accusations of wrongdoing, a judge could very likely add that into the custody order if asked. I'd remind your son's stepfather that stealing, removing the lock your son bought, and destruction of property, breaking his drone, are crimes, and also follow up with police reports about any further problems. You are the idiot. Yes, your son should have privacy, and his stepfather was rude, but you do not know exactly what is going on in his home. And secondly, you do not get to dictate what goes on in his home. If you're really that concerned, then petition the court for physical custody, and your son can make a statement to his preferences. But you do not get to dictate anything, let alone try to enforce it in his home. It's irrelevant that it's your son's home, as he's just a kid. Everyone's the idiot here. I'm sorry, but James is right. You don't have the power or authority to do anything you're threatening to do. What you can do is take your ex-wife to court to get a change in the custody agreement. It's unlikely you could get an agreement that dictates your son receives a lock while at his mother's. But if your son goes along with it, you could get primary custody, and your son could choose not to go back there. James is a controlling tool, and you lost your cool and spouted meaningless threats, which made you look like an idiot. Stop trying to play power games with your ex's new husband, and just deal with your ex to parent the child until you can say goodbye to her in 3 years. My stepmom entered my life when I was 8. I had lost my mom 4 months before. She and my dad met at a grief group. She lost her mom and dad had lost his wife/my mom. They got married 5 months in, and she threw herself into mothering me and having more kids with my dad. It always hurt her that I didn't want another mom and that I wasn't open to having that relationship with her or letting her be that to me. So I always kept her in the step-parent who comes into an older kid's life place. She wasn't quite a parent, but she was family, and I saw her like that because she brought my dad back to himself. Our relationship has always been complicated because of this. She never gave up hope one day she would hear me call her mom, and I never opened up to that idea. I was never looking for that, which meant she always felt like she was competing with my mom for something she would never be able to win in. So when I had my kids, she was hurt to be Grandma Jean and hurt that I told stories about my mom to my kids. And every year on her birthday, we write letters to Grandma telling her about stuff. As a kid, suggested by my paternal grandparents, I did this, and I continued the tradition with my kids. It feels like a nice way to actively keep someone's memory alive, while also not going overboard and getting trapped by the grief. It also makes it something nice the kids can actively do. My stepmom never knew about the letters, found out about them on my mom's birthday this year, and she confronted me about it. She told me she thought becoming a mom would make me more drawn to her, would make me more open to the idea that I have another mom, that mom is more than just giving birth. I told her it made me feel more connected to my mom, that I was always clear the role of mom was never open to anyone else, and she can't fill a position that isn't available. I told her I cared about her, but she needed to understand that as much as I appreciate her loving my dad and me, and for being great to me, she was never going to be mom. It broke her heart and she raged at me for dismissing her as a mother and for refusing to let her be what she wanted to be. I told her she was a mother. She has 4 children who are hers. She's just not my mother. She seems broken about it. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. I'll never understand the step-parent that feels the need to replace a parent. They are not new moms or dads. They are extra moms or dads. Not new, extra. You're 100% right. It's a competition that she will never win because it's in her own mind. She needs therapy. Maybe you can suggest the two of you go together so you can talk it through with a neutral third party. You do seem to care about her. You are the idiot, OP. Stop acting like you have no idea what's going on. Say the truth you won't acknowledge. She is really broken about what you said because you reject her attempts to be a solid influence in your life. You sound like you have kept her at bay all these years for a sense of control that a child would want, and that is understandable. And now it's time to let that go. If she loves you with all her heart and takes you in as her own and tries to do right by you, is that not what a mom does? How would your mom feel about how you treat her? Would she be proud that you shoot stepmom down repeatedly? That you should keep making her feel less than? I think you're still a little child, wishing for an outcome you can't have. And that's sad. My ex-husband Dan and I have a 10-year-old daughter, Emily. We divorced 8 years ago after Dan came out as gay, and he effectively left me for one of his friends from work, Jim. They didn't have an affair, but there were feelings there before we separated. They now live together. I remarried 4 years ago to my husband, Nick, so Dan and I share custody of Emily pretty much 50-50. One source of tension has been Emily's relationship with Jim. Dan, Nick, and I come from very conservative Christian backgrounds, whereas Jim is from a left-wing Jewish-Italian family. Emily has always been something of a free spirit, and she and Jim get on like a house on fire. She and Nick have a good relationship, but Nick is more of a typical stepfather. She respects Nick, but she's obsessed with Jim. She always wants to be doing what he's doing. She's developed a bad habit of walking around the house without shoes or socks, because he does. She only eats her eggs hard-boiled, because that's how he eats them. And she always talks about how funny he is. I had to put my foot down last year when she started calling Dan and Jim her dads, but didn't call Nick her dad. Last month it all came to a head when she came home from a week at theirs and proudly showed us some of the Italian that Jim has been teaching her. It turns out that she had asked him to teach her Yiddish and Italian. I asked her why, and she said not only was it fun to have secret conversations with Jim, she was the only child who could carry it on. This annoyed me because she isn't Jim's child, and she doesn't have an ancestral language to carry on. Our family only speaks English and always has. I also felt like this made her relationship with Nick more unequal, as he doesn't have another language to teach her. and bond with her. I immediately phoned Dan and expressed that I felt Jim was stepping over the line and getting too involved. Dan got uncharacteristically angry at me. He said that if I have a problem with Emily being closer to Jim than Nick, it was up to Nick to build up his relationship with Emily, not up to Jim to tear theirs down. I said that Nick couldn't do that, as he didn't get to be just the fun parent like Jim does, because Nick has to be the only father figure in our household. In contrast, Jim can just be Emily's friend. Dan told me that I was being ridiculous and accused me of being homophobic, which is ludicrous. He must have said something about it to Emily, as she stopped talking about Jim in our house, which I'm glad about, but she's been very frosty with us. Nick has tried to get her involved in things that they can do together, but she's not showing any interest. I feel like I did have to say something, but I'm worried I went over Nick's head and made things worse and should have left him to handle it. I want Jim to stop overstepping. You are the idiot. Cut the crap about overstepping his bounds. This is your real issue. Dan, Nick, and I all come from very conservative Christian backgrounds. Jim is showing an interest in your daughter. She seems to enjoy him and love spending time with him. In other words, your daughter is happy and has another adult in her life who cares about her. If you cared about your daughter, you would be happy for her. You may call yourself a Christian, but there is nothing Christ-like about your behavior. Also, the "we only speak English" nonsense is stupid and just ignorant. Guess what, OP? Your family probably didn't always speak English, and your kid learning languages will help her in the real world. You are the idiot, for God's sake. Get your head out of your butt. You are the idiot. I don't understand why walking around the house without shoes or socks is a bad habit. She always talks about how funny he is. Oh, the horror. Great that she feels comfortable calling Jim and Dan dad. Not sure how this would be a bad thing or Jim's fault. You say she respects Nick, but if she's not seeing him as a father, then that's on him to sort out and change the dynamic. It's not reasonable to expect everyone to step back and do less. Stop being jealous. She likes Daddy's partner more than Mummy's. When I, 26 male, was 22 years old, I had to step up and take custody of my younger brother, Isaac. He's now 18. It was hard on me. I had to step up and suddenly become a parent to him. But unfortunately, our parents were drug addicts, and they're not in the picture. And almost all family abandoned us, promised to be there, and just never stepped up. Isaac is a really sensitive kid. Sometimes he has really bad panic attacks and needs huge amounts of reassurance. He's not so independent emotionally, but he is still very responsible and doing good in school. He likes to stay with me and live at home while in college. Recently, he had some friends over, and they were drinking. We live in Europe, 18 is legal. I didn't mind that until they got out and wanted to drive around. I called Isaac aside. I asked him what he was doing, and he said he only had one beer and that's nothing, and that he was fine. I said no, and he got upset and started to argue with me. I didn't want to embarrass him, so I told him to go inside and told his friends we had some emergency and that I was sorry they had to go without Isaac. We had some arguments back and forth. Finally, I told him to sit down at the computer and played some compilation of drinking and driving videos. Isaac started to freak out after one video, but I made him stay for at least 5 minutes. I watched it with him. He didn't have a full-on panic attack, but he was slightly trembling. After that, he just apologized and went to his room. He didn't get out for about 3 hours, and when he did, he wasn't talking to me much. Only short answers. I'm scared I traumatized him. Not the idiot. You did the right thing. He might be traumatized over the video, but at least it wasn't him. He should understand the dangers of drinking and driving. Give him some time, then talk to him in a reassuring way that you only care for his safety, that whenever he drinks, you will be available to pick him up or call a ride for him so he won't be in danger. I'm not going to call you an idiot because drunk driving is a dreadful, dangerous thing, but you do realize he's an adult. You can't punish an adult. You can lay down rules for living in your home, etc., but you can't make him sit where he doesn't want to sit, etc. You risk driving him away altogether if you behave as if you have parental power over him. I'm glad you dissuaded him from drunk driving, as I'm sure you are as well. He was the idiot for even thinking about doing that. However, you know about his anxiety issues. Could you not have dissuaded him any other way? You likely did traumatize him a bit. But still, if this was your last resort, you would not be wrong. Recently, my girlfriend and I bought and moved into our very first house together. We're both very excited to start this chapter of our lives. My girlfriend invited both her parents and my mom for a special dinner. My girlfriend, her parents, and I are both vaccinated. It was an early dinner set outside to help with everything. My girlfriend is half Korean, and she told my mom beforehand that she'd be serving Korean food at this dinner. My mom didn't raise a complaint and was rather excited about dinner. My girlfriend spent a lot of time and effort on the dishes. She made cabbage soup, sesame broccoli, eggplant in a zucchini dish, shrimp pancakes, steamed tofu, and egg salad. When my mom saw what was on the table, she was visibly confused. She asked my girlfriend, in front of her parents, where the real Korean food was. When my girlfriend told her that this was real Korean food, she got visibly agitated and started complaining about how she expected sushi or something. My girlfriend, slightly annoyed and offended, asked her to at least try the food, and my mom couldn't even touch it. I pulled my mom aside and told her that her behavior was disrespectful, racist, and that I wanted her to go. She started yelling and made a fuss about how the host, my girlfriend, and I were expected to treat the guests better than how my girlfriend was treating her. My mom made a huge deal of everything, but finally agreed to leave my house. My mom had to call a taxi, and though my girlfriend was extremely irritated with my mom, she felt a little guilty to leave her alone hungry while she was waiting for her ride to come. So my girlfriend offered to make mom a sandwich, and my mom declined, insisting on being served real fancy food at this supposedly fancy dinner. My girlfriend even offered her a pack of crisp and nuts. However, my mom refused all of it. She ended up eating the nuts though. My girlfriend gave up and left my mom alone. However, my mom kept insisting on being included back at the dinner, despite her unwillingness to eat anything. I had to practically yell at her to tell her to shut up. She left, and the next day I received a bunch of angry texts from my mom, aunt, and dad, telling me how horrid my girlfriend and I were for letting my mom starve. Not the idiot. You didn't let her starve. You served her food she didn't like the look of, and which she refused to try. You offered her a sandwich, which she also refused, and she ate nuts. What she did was create a scene and embarrass you and your girlfriend in front of her parents. You did nothing wrong, and she acted like a badly behaved child. Not the idiot. Your mom threw a temper tantrum because she was told Korean food would be served, and then when it was cooked and served, instead of taking a big dose of humble pie and letting herself be educated, she threw a fit. Also, isn't sushi more commonly associated with Japanese culture? Their mom's level of entitlement and emotional immaturity is astounding. Who behaves like that in front of other people? It's so rude, I'm mind blown. If that were my mom, I would have been completely mortified. I am, however, very proud of OP for having such a shiny spine to stand up for their girlfriend. Very firm boundaries and very harsh consequences for breaking them is the only thing that works for this level of entitlement. And I wonder if this is her normal behavior or some ugly intolerance rearing its head.